4 holly leaves, I'm going to use the PME plunger cutter. This is a medium holly leaf. For gum paste, I've colored this with moss green, primarily moss green, a little juniper green, and just a dot of black. Gum paste tends to dry lighter in color, so this will be lighter when done, but we will color it to make it a little darker. I like to use for dark green leaves or green leaves in general that the leaves sit fairly high into the stem. I like to use green floral wire for this, because then I don't have to tape it. But these lengths, which are 6-inch lengths, I'm going to cut in half because I really don't need all of that stem for the leaf. There, all prepared, ready to go. 26 gauge. So on my cell board, which has ridges on it, I'm going to massage some vegetable shortening into my gum paste. This colored gum paste will tend to be a little bit stickier when you start to work with it, but then it'll dry very quickly. I'm going to roll it into a fat sausage, and then using the French bread style, I'm going to roll from center out across the 3 ridges of my cell board. I'll press down gently and put some of the dusting pouch across it. Now notice that it's sitting high up on the ridges of the cell board. This is because I want to be able to see the bottom of the ridges here. So when I roll this, I'm going to roll this forward. I usually roll forward and backwards, but for this one I'm going to mainly roll forwards because I want to leave these bottom ridges exposed. I'll leave those bottom ridges exposed. Then I'm going to take my little palette knife. You can use a tapered spatula. And I'm going to cut across here just to form a straightish line. Now I can see just where the ridges are. For the plunger cutter, I'm going to start with the base of the stem down, but I would like to know where the end of the leaf is. So I've marked my cutter with a little Sharpie there. That way I don't have it off kilter when I go to cut it, and the ridge will stay fairly centered up the leaf. So I'm going to center the base of the holly cutter on the ridge, the very base stem, and then I'm going to align that Sharpie mark at a 12 o'clock position up from the ridge. And I'm press down firmly. So I'll press down firmly. I'm not giving it much of a wiggle there, just maybe a little minute wiggle. Then I'm going to press down the plunger to imprint it, and keeping the plunger pressed down, I'm going to lift up the cutting edge of the tool and then lift my tool away. So it gets a nice little imprint there, doesn't it? And I'm going to do the same thing for the other two. So line up at the base, line up at the top, press down very firmly, press the plunger down firmly, keeping the plunger pressed down, lifting up the cutting and pulling away. And then my final one. I think I'm going to put, see how that stretched just a little bit? I'm going to put a little bit of vegetable shortening on the cut edge of my holly leaf and add just a little bit of dusting pouch to here, and that ought to help with that on this one. Press down firmly, plunger down, cut her up and pull away. Yeah, looks better. Now I'm going to lift away the excess. So I'll lift away the excess, and it should usually, that's the one that didn't go so well, leaves the rest of the leaf down. There we go. 2 out of 3. All right. Now you might need some help with your tapered spatula or your palette knife in lifting your leaf up. You might need that. Then I'm going to take my 26 gauge wire, dip it in some gum glue. It's got some excess there, so I'm going to brush that off on my finger. And there's my little ridge up the back. I'm going to slide it up the ridge and pinch in to accentuate it. So I'll do that again. Dipping my 26 gauge wire in gum glue, brushing off the excess. I'll hold it between my thumb and index finger. The ridge is there on the back. And slide it up. And I hold it between my thumb and index finger so that I can feel it sort of skimming the skin. If it's poking my skin, then you'll know you've poked through, pull out a little bit, and then reinsert, and should help. Pinching it at the base. And there we are. Now I'll take these onto the soft side of the petal pad. I usually keep one side coated with vegetable shortening for rolling out my pieces. The other side nice and dusted for softening my pieces. And I'm going to take my holly leaves veined side down onto the softening side of the petal pad. I'm going to use the dog bone tool. The dog bone tool has large and small. I'm going to use the smaller of the dog bone tool, and I might just dust that too, just to make sure that it doesn't stick. And in between, in the little scallops in between the points of the holly, I'm going to indent. You'll notice that the ball tool is facing outward of the petal. So I'm going to indent in between, indent all those little scallops there. And the dog bone tool always faces outward when I do that. That'll give it a nice look on the forward side of the petal. I'll do that. In between each one. And then I'm going to flip this over and to the petal pad. I'm going to use the small veining tool. This is the veining tool, and this we often call the Dresden tool. But it's got a large veiner and a small veiner, a narrow veiner. I'm going to use the narrow veiner. Now you want to be very gentle with this. So it's not a heavy pressing. I just want to accentuate that center vein and the outer point. Like that. So if you press too hard, you'll cut through. So just to accentuate it. And then I'm going to pinch it in half gently, almost like a little taco shell. Like that. And you can curve it at this point too. So again, starting at the base of the leaf, going along that center vein that's already there as a guide and accentuating it. Just a gentle roll. And then pinching it almost like a little taco. Pinching that in there, and you can curve it. Now to dry these, I've got some crumpled foil here. And the crumpled foil will help it dry in realistic positions. So you can put it into different positions on your foil and then let it dry. After it's completely dry overnight, then you can wire them together, dust them as we'll do later, and I've sprayed these with some edible lacquer. To put together the holly leaves, I'm going to use some dark green tape. This came in the Wilton set. I cut it in half to make half-width tape. I'm going to stretch it slightly to release the glue. I'll take one of my holly leaves to start at the end, and I'll wrap it around just about an inch from the base of the petal. And then I'll take another holly leaf. I'm going to bend it at a bit of a right angle and attach it. Don't worry that it doesn't look perfect yet. Tape down about 1 inch. Add another one. Tape down about 1 inch. And add another one. And I'll continue on this way. All the way around to make little branches. So I'll tape these down. And then I'll start another one up. So I'll tape down about 1 inch. And this is very sticky tape. Now when you bend, make sure you bend where you've inserted the wire so that you don't snip off your petals. And another one. And one last one. What you can do is, if you have trouble getting it attached, you can take and you can wrap the tape around a couple of times. It's very sticky tape, and then start to spin it, and that'll make it attach. Now they're ready for dusting. I have some forest green here. This is some Wilton forest green, and a nice fluffy brush. And I'm going to take, supporting the petals with my finger, I'm going to take it, I'm going to brush it all over the leaf. Maybe a little bit onto the floral tape also. Flip over. And again, brush all over the leaf. You don't have to get every section of the leaf, but you want to get a good portion of the leaf to give it some shading. For the high leaves, they're a darker green. Then, because I'm going to be using a confectioner's glaze to make this a shiny leaf, I'm going to steam this leaf just to set the color. So I'll do that now. My steamer is setting out a nice array of steam here. So I'm going to hold my holly leaves about 6 inches from the spray of steam, not too close. This will slightly melt the gum paste, causing the dusting colors to blend, and then when it dries in about 5 minutes, the color will be set in there and it'll be ready for the confectioner's glaze. So I've got my confectioner's glaze here. You can buy this on mail order, and what this will do is add sheen to the leaves. I set the color and now I'm going to brush this on. This comes in spray, which is what I had in class, but I kind of like to brush it on because I feel like I can get better coverage that way. So you'll see I'm just brushing it on with the little brush that came with it. And I'll also brush it on the back of the leaf. Holly leaves are glossy, so this adds a gloss to it. You can thin it with some shellac thinner, and that will make it less glossy. But I like holly leaves to be very glossy. And this is a confectioner's glaze, so it is an edible product. I find it very noxious. It's got a big smell to it, so you want to do it in a well-ventilated area. And this usually takes, I like to dry this on parchment paper so that it doesn't stick, and this usually takes about 30 to 45 minutes to actually dry. So put it on parchment paper. It's very sticky, and in about 30 minutes it'll be dry and ready to put into your display.